In my imaginative story entitled The Inevitable Order, I employ the wartime setting of World War I Gallipoli and detail a young Australian soldier's struggle against his inescapable fate of death. The story is a reflection on the inevitability of death and its correlation with humanity's futile struggle to exert control over their existence. The depiction of the paradoxical concept in my imaginative was inspired by Kenneth Slessor's poems Out of Time and Beach Burial, and the 19th century American folk song Poor Wayfaring Stranger. Influenced by his experience as a World War II war correspondent, in Beach Burial, Slessor demonstrates the close relatedness between the futility of conflict and the inevitability of death. Through parallelism, Slessor describes how when confronted by the deceased, the soldiers pluck them from the shallows and bury them in burrows, revealing the routine normalcy associated with death during war. The metaphor, the sand joins them together, enlisted on the other front, powerfully conveys the concept that despite the differing nationalities and personal motivations of the deceased, they are united by death. Whereas in Out of Time, Slessor thoroughly reflects on humanity's fascination with time and its correlation to their fear of death. Humanity's struggle with time is portrayed by the persona, who believes that his fate pursues him. The personification of this fate foreshadows his predetermined death. His demise is recognized in the concluding statement, "The body dies and rots, and time flows past like 100 yachts." The repetition of the simile used in the opening of the poem presents the personified time as the unrelenting negative force behind the inevitability of death, a concept which is also subtly explored in Beach Burial. The 19th century American folk song, I'm a Poor Wayfaring Stranger, has a persona who embraces their inevitable fate in the hope that death will bring them peace after a life of hardship. The repetition in the lyrics, I'm going there to see my father, I'm going there no more to roam, emphasizes how the persona has come to terms with their near death. The metaphorical language, I know my way is rough and steep, but golden fields lie just before me, contrasts life and death, highlighting the persona's belief that one's inevitable passing and entry into the Christian heaven brings about definitive fulfillment. Inspired by Out of Time, in my story, time is personified in an inexplicit manner and portrayed as a force in conflict with the protagonist, who is awaiting the order to charge an enemy trench. To effectively convey this conflict, metaphorical language is weaved within the story, giving the responder insight into the paradoxical feeling of being pursued by an ever-present death during life. A melancholic tone similar to that of Beach Burial is utilized in the description of the young soldier's nervous anticipation and is effective in foreshadowing his inevitable death. Similar to the persona in the song I'm a Poor Wayfaring Stranger, the protagonist subconsciously feels as if his confrontation with death is imminent. The visual imagery of the woeful world as depicted in the lyrics is also somewhat incorporated into the story. The representation of the inevitability of death in my story implores the responder to reflect on the human desire to escape the impending doom of death. The depiction of a soldier preparing to charge into the embrace of death suggests that time is omnipotent and humanity's struggle to assert control over their existence is ineffectual.